views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups. If you'd like to produce a show, call us at 260-421-1250.
Hi everyone, this is Countyline, the public access television program with news and information about Allen County government. I'm Mike Green, the Public Information Officer in the Allen County Commissioner's Office. How hard is it for business to do business in Allen County and Fort Wayne? And if there are problems, what can government do to help resolve those issues and make things easier? Well, we're going to talk about that issue today with Allen County Commissioner Nelson Peters. Commissioner Peters is part of a committee that has been looking at this, a joint city-county committee, to try to come up with a plan, some recommendations for trying to address some of the issues they've been hearing about. Commissioner Peters, first of all, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
What are you hearing from the business community, you and other elected officials, about the difficulties or problems they're encountering with trying to expand or even locate a business in our community?
Yeah, I became county commissioner in 2005, and even before then I began to hear from the development community about how hard it was to do business in Fort Wayne and Allen County. That there was a customer culture that people didn't particularly care to deal with, and that there were real process issues that needed to be improved before people were willing to commit fully to Fort Wayne and Allen County. Now, I need to preface that with this comment, and that is, by and large, we do a pretty darn good job. We get permits in the front door and out the back door, about 92% of them in a 24-hour period. It's just the 8% that take anywhere from 30 to 54 days that we hear the most about.
But that 8% represents a fair amount of potential money for our community.
Yes, it does. We're looking at about $450 million of new business every year in this community, and that 8% actually represents $330 million of that $450 million.
And is this a widespread problem as far as new businesses looking to locate here, or are we hearing from existing as well?
We hear from both. You know, you've got some people who know the system, who are able to traverse it a little bit more easily than others, only because they've grown familiar with it. But they still grumble about how hard it is to get through sometimes. Where we really find the rub is with those coming from the outside of Fort Wayne and Allen County, who haven't done business here before, who want to make their mark in this community, who find it so difficult to move through.
So as a result of hearing these concerns, both the city and county got together, a joint committee was formed. Tell us a little bit about how that came about and the work that committee has been doing since its existence.
All due credit to Councilman Roy Buskirk, who established his committee back in about February or March of 2010. It included himself, it included Larry Brown, another county council member, Tom Smith, a city council member, and John Schoaf, a city council member. I was added at the beginning of 2011, and Beth Malloy, the deputy mayor, was added in 2011. I'm not sure who we replaced, but nonetheless, we're there now. The committee has really been meeting just to begin to work its way through this process, to figure out what makes sense, where we need to go with permitting in this community, and how to really fix the problem. It's a very, very slow, painstaking process, but I think we're beginning, and soon we'll begin to see even more fruits of our labor.
And part of the difficulty, I would think, has to come from the balance that you have to strike between trying to make things easier or make the process move more quickly for the business community, while at the same time keeping in place, I guess you could say, the integrity of the rules and laws that are there to protect the community.
And certainly the rules and laws that are there to protect the community are to ensure that we've got safe housing, that we've got safe building practices, and that people are going to be able to maintain in a safe environment. So yes, you're absolutely right, and that's the real tedious balance right now.
Now, the committee had recently came up with a plan that both you and Mayor Tom Henry announced a month or two ago for trying to make the permitting process in particular easier for businesses. Tell us a little bit about that plan.
We actually rolled out a plan the other night to a joint city-county council. And in that plan, we are asking for $1.4 million. That is a $700,000 request to the county council and a $700,000 request to the city council. By and large, we're looking to fix the process ills, fix the culture ills that we see. And in doing that, we will be spending about $500,000, give or take, to recodify and realign a number of ordinances. Those aren't just land use ordinances, but those are ordinances that affect anybody who's going to walk through the door of 19 departments who oversee some portion of the permitting process. And the name of the game at the end of the day is to ensure that because we've aligned them, people can come in, they can do business with the city or they can do business with the county, and the rules aren't going to be changing in between. Also, it will eliminate a lot of very old and obsolete rules. Now, on top of that, we've got some software requests that total somewhere around the $400,000 mark. And we believe that when we complete that entire initiative of getting all the software licenses in place and getting the system fully up to speed for all 19 departments, then all 19 departments will be able to look at each other and find out where the bottlenecks may be and where something is being lost in the process, as well as the community at large. Citizens will be able to look from the outside, get on the internet, and find out exactly where their project may be in the process. On top of that, we will be looking at creating a web portal that will make it a lot easier for people to traverse the system. Some of these tax software programs that are out there right now will lead you step by step by step by step after you've input a little bit of information and will move you in a particular direction based on the information you've provided. This software program will do that. Now, two more things real quick. We're looking at program managers to oversee the process side as well as the customer culture side. And we are going to be looking at an ombudsman or an expediter function, which will allow for somebody to get assistance from the application process up front all the way through when the doors are going to open and the project is done. Somebody will help hold the hand of those individuals who need it through the entire process and make sure that they can get from A to Z as efficiently, as quickly as possible.
And again, that's particularly important for those businesses or industries who are not in Indiana, who haven't done business in the state or in Allen County and Fort Wayne, who may be used to rules and procedures that are in place in other communities and are different from what we have here.
You're absolutely right, Mike. There are a lot of moving parts to this animal. And I think when we've got somebody who can help them better understand where the moving parts are and maybe how to avoid some of those that may be stuck, it'll be greatly beneficial to those coming in from outside Allen County.
There's also, I know, I guess you could call it some cultural retraining that may have to take place within departments to make sure that they are customer friendly, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I think that's correct too. We seem to, at least we're seen as possessing a mindset of regulating all too often, as opposed to actually finding ways to help somebody through the process. And what we've got to do is we've got to reacclimate a number of people to the fact that the people we are serving are the people who are paying the bills, hence they are our customers, and they're the ones who hold us to the standards that we want to maintain. So we've got to change some mindsets in this entire equation.
You talked about the amount of money that this might take, $1.4 million, which would be split evenly between the city and county. And that has to be approved by both the city council and the county council separately. The fact that Fort Wayne and Allen County have worked together on other related type of projects would seem to bode well for this.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that is what the public is crying for at this particular point. I'll be very candid. I have had a number of calls since the meeting that took place 2 nights ago with people who said, we believe you made the sale when we saw city and county council at the table together working towards a common problem. And I had that call more than once yesterday.
Now, what kind of timeline or timetable do you have in mind, or does the committee have in mind for trying to get things implemented? This is I would assume, a step-by-step type process. It's not going to happen all at once at a certain time.
I think that's an excellent question. As I mentioned, there are a lot of things that need to be done to get us to where we think we need to be. There are some things that have already occurred, but I think realistically, we're looking at 12 months at the earliest, and perhaps 18 months worst case.
Some people who have looked at this plan have commented that it seems to had been lacking goals, benchmarks. Do you think with some work that you've done with the city in tweaking this somewhat, that you've been able to address those concerns? I
do, and we took 5 specific things to the joint city-county council the other night, a couple of which included taking the 8% of permitting that doesn't get through the process in a 24-hour period that represents so many dollars to this community, and making sure that instead of 30 to 54 days, in 6 months we'll be looking at 25 to 45 days. In 12 months we'll be looking at 20 to 35 days, and then in 18 months we'll be looking at 15 to 25 days. So as we make those kind of reductions, I think people will begin to see some things. We've done some customer satisfaction surveying at this particular point, and look like we're somewhere around only 60% of the individuals being fully satisfied with the process. We'd like to see that increase to 70% in 6 months, and 80% in 12 months, and 90% in 18 months. So we have included those kind of benchmarks, those things that the public and others can grade us on as we move through the process.
And I'm sure you'll continue to seek the input of the business community to make sure they're on board with it. If they see any problems that might come up during the revamping of this process, they'll let you know about it.
You're absolutely right. We can't make this thing work without the business community.
Okay. Commissioner Peters, thanks for joining us, explaining a little bit about this proposal, and we'll look forward in the coming months to seeing the progress that's made. Thanks again.
Thanks, Mike.
Well, spring is wrapping up. Summer is just about here. And during this time of year, Northeast Indiana always experiences a number of severe weather occurrences. And we thought we would take some time to kind of go over information that you've probably heard a million times, but one more time won't hurt a bit, because it could save a life, and it could also help save your property. Bernie Beyer, who's Director of Homeland Security here in Allen County and Fort Wayne, is with us to kind of go over some things you need to keep in mind, things you need to be doing in the event of severe weather. And Bernie, we appreciate you taking time to join us again.
Well, great. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me again today.
First, let's talk a little bit about Homeland Security and what its roles and responsibilities are before, during, and after a severe weather occurrence.
Sure. Simply put, it's just our job to help prepare the community, not to do it for you, but to lead the effort. Preparedness is an individual responsibility, but as local government leaders, it's our job to help coordinate that effort and make sure whatever we do is in the best interest of the community.
One of the big things, obviously, before severe weather occurs is to get notification out to the public that it's on the way and to warn them of such occurrences. What do you have, what weapons do you have in your arsenal to help?
Well, really, we go one step back, and every individual, business, or family needs to have a plan. They need to think about what it is they're going to do in inclement weather or in a bad situation so that when they receive that warning, they can execute their plan. So in the response phase, if we turn on a tornado siren or issue a text alert or send a fire truck in the neighborhood, that's great to warn people, but if you've not planned in advance on what are you going to do when you get that warning, it's kind of a waste to warn.
One of the things that you have available to you are the warning sirens around Allen County. Now, you're going to be asking the public to give you some feedback as to whether these sirens are the best way to get the word out to folks. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a good time for the dialogue to begin. Nationally, we've seen a couple catastrophic tornadoes and a lot of loss of life here in the Midwest United States. And Indiana, just this past week, had over a dozen tornadoes touch down within the Hoosier State. So we know that inclement weather, particularly tornadoes, are a risk to Hoosiers. And it's important that we have a plan in place and know what to do in the event of that bad weather. Tornado sirens or outdoor warning sirens for decades, for a generation or two, have been an important part of that overall system. And the question today with the shortened budgets and the tighter economy, as these systems that are aging 50, 60 years old, and we have to replace them, is do we need to replace them? Does local government really want to spend that much money on a system that some feel is antiquated, or are there new technologies that we ought to be investing our money? Or is the answer C, a little bit of both?
So people should watch for that in the coming weeks. You'll be, as I say, trying to gauge public opinion regarding this, and especially in areas where perhaps those newer technologies are not necessarily readily available.
I would agree, and I don't think it's a geographic type question. I think this is just a consumer, a use question. Much like just about anything else we do, who uses technology, who doesn't, who's got it available to them. So there's not going to be one easy answer. It's going to have to be a community answer. And just like the community that the siren system serves, it's going to have to be a little bit diverse and flexible enough to meet the needs of society.
Okay, you were talking a little bit about folks making plans. Some of those plans can include maybe a little bit of yard work or landscaping to get ready in case of severe weather, and that's to kind of keep an eye out as far as tree branches and whatnot around your house.
You're right, and here we've had a couple power outages in the last few years. These old oak trees, a lot of our neighborhoods, a lot of the roads have a lot of the original growth trees, and we lose those in the high winds. That's not a big surprise. As unpleasing to the eye as it is sometimes for the power companies to come down whole streets or alleys and cut branches back, they're doing it for a purpose, to keep that power on.
Something else people should be aware of, if they're not already, is to check to see whether they're in a floodplain.
Flooding here in Fort Wayne, Allen County, is a big issue almost annually now, and that is very important. This year, this past spring, we saw a record high flash flood here for the month of May. So that becomes important, not just the riverine flooding that we've grown so accustomed to and we know how to respond to, but the flash flooding comes just a little bit quicker and catches us unprepared. So it's those quicker events that last a little bit less than a big river flood, but they hit us with a little bit more intensity, and that intensity seems to be even higher if you don't have a plan in advance.
Getting a disaster kit ready and available is also a good idea.
It is, and the U.S. Department of Homeland Security tells you that all the time. Have a plan, have a kit, and be ready are their 3 simple steps. So having a plan, we've talked about, putting a kit together is also important. And that kit is unique to each individual, to each family, to homeowners, to each business. Of course, you need the basic things, your water, your food, candy, staples, things like that. But you might need diapers or medicines, maybe some cash. The Red Cross, our website at fwachomeland.org, U.S. Department of Homeland Security at ready.gov, all have a lot of great examples of things you can put in your kit, but you've got to ultimately decide what makes sense to you to make sure that you put the right things in your kit.
Unique for you, but broad enough to handle any kind of emergency or disaster that comes about, whether it's weather-related or otherwise.
You're right, and that's unique, or not so unique, I guess, about Indiana, is the same things my mom keeps on the shelf for the wintertime when we start to get snow days are the same things that FEMA tells you to put in case of a tornado or an earthquake or a flash flood. So all we're talking about here, to keep it really simple, is just self-preservation. It's just, what do you need to take care of yourself for 48 or 72 hours? Do you have a couple extra cans of food or the right kind of water or some candy? Just, can you take care of yourself if the power goes off for a couple days? And that's it. Whatever you need for a couple days is the right thing for you.
And the reason we talk about doing this now and not waiting till closer to when a severe weather event may occur is because of the speed that these things can take place during the spring and summer months. A severe storm can be on you just like that.
You're right, Mike, and we've seen that a lot this spring. Anytime the temperature gets up over 80 degrees, especially when we get close to 90 in the afternoon, the likelihood of that afternoon thunderstorm really increases. And here in the early spring and then late in the summer, those early thunderstorms also bring the high winds with them, and that's when we have the wind shears, the tornadic tap activity, or some wind damage, and it comes up on the way to the lake or when you're out having fun furthest away from that plan. Most people plan to have things in their basement in the house, and almost always you can guarantee that storm's going to hit when you're not at the house, when you're up at the lake or outside having fun at the ballpark. You're going to be somewhere away from your comfort zone, so you're going to have that plan.
And so in that case, if you're in your car driving around, you don't need to stay in your car in a circumstance like that. You're looking for ditch areas like that where you can get down and protect yourself.
You're right. In the event of a tornado, that's one of the worst places to be, is in an automobile. So you do want to park that car, get out of the automobile, and get into a ditch up under the viaduct there, wherever it is that you can get to. But the car is not your safe location. We saw that here in the tornadoes in the Midwest. Several folks were killed as their cars were thrown about or destroyed.
And if you are in your house, basement is usually the best place to be in the case of a tornado. And if you don't have one of those, you're looking to get into kind of the center of the house, away from windows, doors, and such.
You're correct, and we saw a lot of good examples of that there in Joplin, where a lot of slab foundation houses that were hit, no basement to go to. So they looked for that interior hallway, the interior room without windows. One of the places that a lot of people survived at was the bathtub. They made their way to the bathroom and found a couple pillows or a small mattress, not enough to suffocate you because there's going to be water and wind, but they found some type of barrier to put over them, and they remained relatively safe in the bathtub.
Let's go back and talk a little bit about flooding and potential for having to evacuate from your home. When you're out in a car having to drive away from a flooded area, you have to be extra careful about water on the roadway, because it can be very deceiving when you're driving toward that kind of situation, how quickly the water can get up on your car.
Right, there's a national program called Turn Around, Don't Drown. It's really simple, and that's kind of the neatness of this program. It really is that simple. Stay out of the water. I can't say it much easier. 3 inches of water will float a car in a flash flood that's rapidly moving. Here in the Allen County area, in some of our flash floods in some of the creeks and ditches, what you normally might go after crawdads, wade in up to your knees, and play in a flash flood, that water is moving fast enough to drag you downstream. I've seen tree trunks and branches almost the size of telephone poles completely splinter and shatter in a loud boom when it hits a bridge in one of these creeks. So those creeks act completely differently in a flash flood. They're not the friendly, fun places that you normally see in the summertime, so you need to stay out of those, which includes the roadway. A flooded roadway, again, anything over 3 inches has got the potential with the current to wash your car away and put you into greater danger. It's much easier to turn around and don't drown. And
be especially vigilant if you're out in the evening hours at night, when along roads where perhaps it's not lit as well as other areas. That's when you really can't tell until you're right up on it, and then it could be too late.
You're absolutely right. We just saw in the last 2 storms, we had so many flooded roads in the county. All the high water signs were in use and out. We were barricading some of the roads. The Allen County Highway Department did a great job of knowing where the problem areas typically are and getting signage up. But this particular storm this month had so much rain and so many flooded areas that typically don't flood. There are a lot of unmarked areas. And I know there's important things to everybody in their lives each day, even had graduations this past week, but there's nothing so important around here that's worth risking your life where you couldn't turn around, find another way, or just wait for another day.
Well, hopefully people will take heed of what we've talked about and make the plans, but even the best plans, you're still going to have potential for damage to your home, to your property from storms. What does Homeland Security do in terms of after the storm has passed?
Sure, that's probably our busiest time, and it lasts sometimes up to 2-3 years after the event. In the recovery phase, it's our job to do that quick assessment to determine just how much damage has occurred. How many uninsured residents or how much uninsured damage are we looking at from a dollar figure? We collect those totals up and get them to the state, who works with those totals collectively to see if we've had enough damage, enough widespread damage to ask the governor to ask FEMA for assistance. So it's the locals' responsibility. It's our job to assess our damage and determine what help we might need from state or federal government. It's not the state and federal government's job to come save the day and come bail us out. It's up to us to make those decisions for ourselves and ask for help. So that's one of the most important things we do early on, and then to record that damage and then work on the recovery of finding ways to fix, to pay for, to get us back to the way it was before the storm. And in the case of a declared disaster, some of our larger floods here in 03, 05, 08, in the Allen County area, or in a tornado or any other type of national disaster, it's our job to work with FEMA and the individual homeowners and local governments, sometimes again up to 2 years afterwards, to try to recoup some of those costs to make us whole again as best we can. But I think it's important to balance that. As much as we'd like the state or federal government to come bail us out whenever we need it, it's still our money in the first place. You know, we're the taxpayers. This is where all the money comes from. So skipping local money and going to state or going to federal as a solution to bail us out is really a short-term solution. We're just asking the system at 3 different levels to pay for the same thing. So it's also important to assess the damage and, whenever possible, to develop the best local solution that has the least impact on us fiscally, which means on taxpayers.
So how can residents and homeowners help Homeland Security in the assessment phase?
It starts all the way at the beginning, is to have a plan in place and to know what your hazards are. If there are things you can do to reduce, which we call mitigate, the potential for damage in your home, just like you do for fires, where you might have a smoke detector, or maybe some folks put a fire extinguisher in their kitchen, or they keep an extra box of baking soda. All those things we've learned since kindergarten. It's get on the internet, get brochures, learn about the hazards that you face here in Indiana, and try to figure out what you can do through those guides to help mitigate the potential for damage from those. Backup valves, if you have basements, to reduce backflow and flooding, and how you landscape your yard. You talked about that from fire damage. Or looking at those old oak trees hanging over your power lines, can you trim back branches from over the roof that might swing down or snap in a windstorm and put a hole in your roof? So all those things, be responsible for yourself first, and then look around, especially if you have elderly or at-risk or handicapped neighbors. See what you can do to help each other. It's our community, and we're the best ones to take care of ourselves and each other.
Well, Bernie, we hope folks will listen to what good information you provided and start to work now on those plans and be ready for anything that's liable to come our way this spring and summer. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Great, thanks, and thanks again for having me here today.
This month on Countyline, we want to take the opportunity to profile one of county government's newest elected officials and the office she oversees, and we're talking about TERA KLUTZ, who is Allen County Auditor, and was elected to that position last November and began her duties as auditor in January. And TERA, we appreciate you taking time to talk to us.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Now, you are no stranger to this office because you've served here previously as deputy for 8 years, right?
That's correct. I started 8 years ago as Lisa Blosser, now Borgman's chief deputy. I worked as a CPA in the private sector, and she campaigned on hiring a CPA as her chief deputy. So we had lunch one day, and I decided to give it a try, and I really enjoyed it, so I ran for office.
She was unable to continue. 2 terms is all she could serve in a row, so she's now clerk of the courts. What are some of the advantages, do you feel, of being a CPA in this office?
One of the advantages is that we, as the auditor of Allen County, part of my duty is responsible for producing financial reports and annual data that must be complied and must meet certain standards. And when you're a CPA, you learn those standards in school. They're called governmental accounting standards and auditing standards. And I am able, since I had that background, I'm able to compile those. And over the past 8 years with Sarbanes-Oxley Acts, the State Board of Account Auditors would go around the state and a lot of times do the financial statements for the counties. But as a result of Sarbanes-Oxley, they are no longer compiling the financial statements. They are just doing the audits. So that puts all the counties in charge of compiling their own financial statements. Luckily for Allen County, we do have the information, we do have the background, we can compile those ourselves. And so we've been able to meet the requirements without spending extra money and hiring a CPA or an outside firm to do it for us. You
are one of the few, if not only, CPAs serving as auditor in the state of Indiana, and you've kind of continued the tradition because your deputy is also a CPA. That's right. When I looked at the research, I believe I'm the first CPA elected county auditor, and I believe I'm the only CPA auditor of the 92 counties in Indiana. I went and hired another CPA because I want to continue on the tradition. I think it just provides another set of analytical skills and a background information that if we can get as taxpayers of Allen County, then we should. Let's talk a little bit about the duties of your office. You mentioned you're in essence the Chief Financial Officer for Allen County. Yes, that's correct. That's one branch of my office. The other branch, the largest branch, actually has to do with property taxes. The assessor is also a separately elected county official, and she is in charge of assessing all the property in Allen County, all the real property and also personal property. And then she turns that value over to the county auditor, and that's my office. And my office is where you can apply for exemptions like your homestead standard deduction, a mortgage exemption, over 65. We apply all those deductions to your values, and we'll calculate a tax rate and calculate your tax bill. At that point, we will turn it over to the treasurer's office, and she will send out a bill and collect your money. And then it comes back to us, and we'll take the money that was collected by all the taxpayers and pass it back out to the airport, the cities, the towns, the schools, and all the tax units that are supported by the property tax. You also put together the budget for Allen County government. Talk a little bit about that process, and because I know that probably is almost a year-round thing, even though you obviously can, once you've concluded one year's budget, you probably are just about starting on the next year's. Yeah, I took office in January, and we had about a few months just to kind of get through property tax calculation because we got the rates in January, and now we're starting on the finance side. We're going to start estimating revenue. We've already started having a lot of internal team meetings and making estimates for 2012. The process has to start the year before because budgets are required to be adopted by the fall of the year before they start. And so we're planning on meeting with a lot of elected officials, the council, and the commissioners next month just to give them a preview of our estimates. How are things looking for the coming year? Allen County is in a fortunate position because we have, over the past 7 years, we have been able to build up a rainy day fund to allow us to continue to operate without reducing services during this economic recession, which the state felt a couple years ago, and the county is just now starting to see the reduction in income tax because there's a lag. So this year we're using $4.5 million of our rainy day fund, which started the year with $21 million. Next year I anticipate that we're going to use another $4.5, and probably the year after that. I do believe we will see county departments cutting a little bit for 2012 just because the revenue is still not fully recovered from the recession. And while we're having to take those measures, still not nearly as drastic as the measures some other counties have had to take in Indiana. That's correct, Mike. I do think we are in a fortunate situation where since we have a rainy day fund balance, it allows us to, instead of making a knee-jerk reaction to raise taxes or to cut significant services, we're allowed to study and implement
maybe cost-cutting measures that, with a little analysis, we can actually reduce the overall budget and just spend what we're getting in without having to make a decision like yesterday because we just found out we're going to lose $5 million.
I know in the past that your predecessor has established kind of a opportunity each year for the taxing units of Allen County to get together and share ideas because of what you just mentioned, revenues being down across the board. Are you anticipating continuing that?
Yes, we're calling it the Fiscal Summit, and this year it'll be the 3rd annual Fiscal Summit. We haven't settled on a date yet, but we're looking at the first week in August. The state is also embarking on an online budgeting system for all the tax units statewide, and that's new this year for 2012. So we are going to host some technology seminars for all the units, and that is, I believe, on August 2nd. And they'll be able to come in, use our technology rooms, and have practice sessions on entering their budgets because we have 20 townships, and some have computers, some don't, but all will be required to submit their budgets online. The good thing with that system is that when it's all online, taxpayers who formerly have to drive down to my office just to see a submitted budget for, let's say, a Boyd Township or Wayne Township or the city of Fort Wayne or Huntertown, now we'll be able to just look online once those budgets are adopted and they can see what those units are proposing to spend the next year.
Technology's changed a lot, I imagine, for this office, not only in the way you operate, but in the way you're able to get information out to the public.
Yeah, we sure have been making more items and forms available online. We also are requiring our vendors, or not requiring, but accepting or voluntary electronic funds transfer. Later on in the year, we'll probably make it mandatory after we worked out all the kinks, just because it saves the county money. It ensures the payments are getting to the right people. It reduces the amount of fraud. Plus, since we're probably going to have to cut budgets next year, that's a great way to cut without the taxpayers feeling any crunch in service.
You're also responsible for handling county government payroll for employees.
That's right. We have over 1,900 employees, full-time and part-time. We do process the payroll, and that is a large part of our job. But we do it with 2 people, so I feel like we do a pretty good job.
And again, I'm sure technology has played part in that in allowing you 2 people to handle all of that.
Yeah, actually we're starting a new system called Time and Attendance that will interface with our payroll system. So it allows employees to punch in from their computer and punch out, and then we've been able to help the departments because their bookkeepers used to have to enter in all the payroll data into our accounting system. Well, the new Time and Attendance system will allow that data to be automatically uploaded into our system, saving all the departments hours.
Well, Tara, we appreciate you taking time to talk to us. Good luck to you in the 4 years as auditor. We look to hopefully talk to you down the road as new things develop in your office that you'd like the public to know about. Thanks again.
Thanks, Mike.
And as we bring this edition of County Line to a close, we get ready for a new beginning here at Citizens Square at 200 East Berry. During the month of June, a number of county offices will be moving over and getting settled into their new headquarters. The Commissioner's Office, the Information Technology Department, Department of Planning Services, the Health Department, the Surveyor's Office, also Building and Highway Departments are among the county offices that will be locating here at Citizens Square. Now, next month on County Line, we're going to give you a little tour of the building. We will show you where some of the county offices are located and talk to some of the folks as they get used to their new surroundings. And a reminder for you, if you missed any of the segments of County Line watching here on cable access television, just a reminder you can view these segments and the entire program on your schedule anytime through our YouTube channel, Allen County Info, or by going to our video on demand service. You can get to either of those locations by going to www.allencounty.us. I'm Mike Green, Public Information Officer in the Allen County Commissioner's Office, and we'll see you again next time on County Line.